Hey guys and gals, you are all looking splendid today. It's good to see you. Come on in. The couches are clean and the hot tub's warming up. So, we're going to do a part two to the random encounter playlist. This is going to turn into something, I hope. I've kind of got a plan to try to get out maybe at least a video every month concerning this stuff. About 500,000 words, 5-10 minutes, nothing big. Uh, so, we're going to talk about random encounters in general and what we mean by a random encounter. Because let me tell you something, it's not really that random. I mean, it's planned, right? First thing about random encounters, they suck. I remember when I started DMing all those D6s for all those days of travel, figuring out the monsters. It was a bunch of meaningless encounters. It was terrible. Bad DMing. My players didn't know. They were just beating up monsters. They were new players. I was a new DM. We were all happy. Um, Plan your stuff. Random isn't really random. We're going to make this work. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to show you how. I'm going to give you ideas. We're going to do this. Look at my notes here. It says kind of what I said before, a little more, using more words. It's never random. Unless you have a plan, you're not going to roll out all those random encounters. You're not going to do a fight between a D6 wolves and a 5th level party. It's just silly. Encounters with merchants and other NPCs, unless you're going to follow up with them later, there's usually not a point in doing it. If you want to run a few fights, make them count. There's no reason to establish that travel involves danger, action. You don't necessarily want your party to, okay, you leave on May 5th. All right, it's November 7th. You're in town now. You want to fill in that space. You want to burn some time. You want to make it feel like it's been some drudgery for the characters. Um, Pick a short list of monsters between every session. Write down some things that you want to work with. I try to do this, and it gets easier and harder at the same time because you got to think harder the higher the level the party gets. Because it can't just be monsters; it's got to be monsters with tricks, maybe waves of monsters. Uh, but you put the time in it; it's what makes a good campaign. Your session notes might just have a little list. 5 Peritons attack the party, passing through the marshes, otherwise known as marshes, ambushed by Atu. That's been one of my favorite creatures lately, even though I can't consistently spell it right or pronounce it. Um, Mountain Pass. The orcs have the high ground. Throw rocks down on party. Just simple stuff. Give yourself some ideas. Nothing complicated to run. If you want to, you can make it complicated. Throw in a battle map. Um, be creative. Throw in some terrain issues. Just make it exciting for the players. They don't always want to just roll initiative, fight, and not even know what the terrain was like around them. So for my next rule, I have that random encounters may or may not apply to existing plot lines. And it's not just black or white. Uh, Now you can have the white, where it just they just ran into some stuff. It has nothing to do with anything. They got too close to an ogre lair. The ogre came out and they fought, and that was it. Then you have the black, where the party is approaching a opposing town with opposing factions, and they ran into a bunch of lookouts, and maybe they get information, maybe they don't, but those lookouts were a part of this overall encounter. And then you have the gray area, the Easter egg, where it's maybe the party is hunting for a demon summoner, and they run into a demon. Um, it's not direct; they can't get information from the demon. It was just a summon and release or escape maybe, but they fight the demon. It feeds into the flavor. For instance, one of my little plot points for a while was that human dragon relations were having problems. So the party, before they even heard about any of this, they had a run in with a dragon. Um, it's an Easter egg, a portent of things to come, or something that you want to keep established in the world. If you know, if you want, if you've decided there's giants around, then occasionally the parties they're going to run into giants. It's important to run those encounters here and there. Other good reasons to run a random encounter. It can be a way to introduce NPCs. You shouldn't do it randomly. You should do it with some thought, but you can introduce quest givers this way. Maybe they're traveling from one town to the next, and the party's going to be spending some time in the new town, so they've pre-met this NPC. Maybe they meet a blacksmith because they know that they're going to need a blacksmith later, so you plant one. Some professional that they can track down later and use for contact. They'll probably forget they have the contact and do something else. But anyway, it's there. So let's see, what else do we have here? The party, blah 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 blah. Check them for murder hobo disease. It's an excellent reason to have an encounter. Not every encounter needs to be a slaughterfest, even if it is contentious. In a rational world, people don't just slaughter other people most of the time. I mean, it's happened throughout history, but there are reasons, real life reasons, to not just annihilate everything in your path. Simple decency is one of them, and that players should have it, characters should have it. The bad guys can be turned over to the authorities. Now, that doesn't mean you should punish people for killing evil monsters. But maybe that you make them think about an offer of surrender and see what they do then. Maybe you hold back, and then the monsters or they hold back, and the monsters are actually able to lend some assistance in return for not being butchered. Combat burns a lot of in-game time. So the main theme here is consciously make decisions about what you're doing. This is where your pre-planning comes in. Think about how you want to spend that time so that everybody has fun and that your goals are moved upon. If you're running a story, make sure you're moving from plot point to plot point and not just, killing a bunch of wolves and kobolds and stuff that's not relevant to the story and not that fun to deal with. In the planning, battle maps help. They really do. They help visualize things, even if it's just a sketch on a piece of paper. You don't have to, get on to Incarnate and spend 3 hours for a half-hour fight. You just throw something down. If you're in a game shop, maybe you can borrow some of their miniatures. Or just throw dice on the table and this is this kind of monster, this is that kind of monster. Here's a trick. This is unscripted. This just popped into my head. Creatures that like thug monsters. Say you're a 7th level party, and you've got these. Like I did, 5th level party against the Hydras. The Hydra. Whenever they were using the ice methods, they were helping the Hydra out. I didn't keep track of their individual health. I used D6s. When they were at full health, they were on a 6. If one SWAT did a third of their damage, I moved them down to a 4. If it did half damage, I moved it down farther. And you don't have to keep up as much that way. You have it there on the table, and anybody can ask. You can see if something's half health or quarter health, or if it's not a zombie. But you know what I'm talking about. Planning all this stuff with terrain, with complications, also gives your party a chance to do cool stuff. All those neat abilities they have, jumping over stuff or sneaking around or entangle or all the various spells and abilities and things that you get to do. It gives them that opportunity to interact with the monsters and the terrain, possibly the weather too. Just throw whatever factors you can in there, whatever you think you can keep up with. It also lets your monsters use cool tricks. Things can use maneuver to stay away from the big bad fighters. And anything you can do to draw out a fight is good for your monsters usually. Um, and all those cool abilities are what makes the game memorable. And speaking of cool, you're pretty cool too. I noticed. So I'm glad you were here. I appreciate you coming by. If you can, do the stuff. Hit the like button, leave a comment. It matters, and I want to hear from you. What you have to say really affects this channel. In fact, my last video on an exercise in world building rivers got a lot of attention. And guess what? We're going to do more world building by biome because of it. More exercises, talking about different things. I think I'm going to do mountains next. And then do, not just talk about mountains, but also do a couple of exercises. One about mountains, one about rivers. Throw the random encounters in there. We've got a next few months planned out pretty good. In the meantime, I want you all to have an absolutely wonderful rest of the week. Let me know if you like this format. This is what the comments are for. Do you want to see pictures or do you want to see this? Have a good evening. Cheers.